company dedicated to enhancing leaders' ability to harness and optimize trust as a strategic business asset.
Man can do what he wills, but he cannot will what he wills. That is a famous quote from Arthur Schopenhauer, a philosopher.
Aha. So free will, it sounds like we're talking about free will and agency today in relationship to trust.
Yeah, I think so.
Excellent. Well, I think in terms of free will, what we've decided the definition around it is our ability to make choices unrestricted by the external forces and undetermined by prior causes. So free will, not allowing those external forces or internal causes. And then agency, our ability to fulfill our capacity through our thoughts and behavior. So help us describe or uncover a little bit more about free will and agency and how that relates to trust.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do get confused, rightly so, on the definition of these two concepts. Free will is such a deep, deep philosophical conversation that all the philosophers throughout thousands of years have never quite figured out yet. So we're not going to today either. But it's an ability, right? An ability to choose. So it's once again, it's in our heads, it's in our own minds. We are processing choice making, but we have free will to the extent that external forces outside of ourselves are not determining the choice or not affecting or influencing that choice that we make. So the more free we are to choose, that's free will, right? So agency is a little different in that it's also an ability, but it's to fulfill our capacity. But each human has different capacity. That's the kicker. Everybody has different types of capacities and levels of capacity, different types of capacity. And so, to the extent you're able to maximize or optimize your capacity that you have available to you through control of your own thoughts and behavior, that is where we get agency from. So, that's how they differ.
Yeah. So it sounds like not being aware of the external forces and how that impacts our internal thoughts and choices. A lot of emotional intelligence here, from what I'm hearing. Yeah. Well, the one way I see this happening, in terms of unrestricted external forces, is still making our choices. One way I see this happening in the world that I live in is, every time we show up to a meeting or to any kind of even one-on-one conversation, we're constantly assessing, do I have the ability to be vulnerable, depending on who's in the room? And oftentimes that's even more heightened when there's a superior in the room, somebody who has control over me or writing my performance review or evaluating me. I might hesitate and think about those external forces before I begin to trust or be vulnerable. Is that a good example of will and agency?
Well, I think so. I think that's excellent. You think about employees and their managers or their directors, their leaders that have position over them, and those relationships. There's power dynamics that are clearly there, and so to the extent I think that an employee feels, it may not be accurate, but to the extent they feel that that other person in the room has control or power or authority or influence, whatever it is, in a negative way to influence them negatively, well, they're going to be very calculative and selective in how they make themselves vulnerable in that space, even if it's not just the two of them in that space.
What are some of the things that you see that leaders or individuals do that really create, I guess the word psychological safety comes to mind as we think about the environment of creating an environment that people feel like they are free to trust. They are free to be vulnerable.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, I think psychological safety is a close cousin to trust, and so that it makes a lot of sense to talk about them together. Uh, so it's about feeling. So the person, it's their perception. They need to feel that they have free will. to trust. They are free, unencumbered to be able to trust. It may not be accurate, but you want it to be accurate. That's better when it is accurate. But they need to feel that, so it's their perception. Trust can't be forced or coerced, or it's not trust by definition. And so, to the extent that you perceive that you are being coerced to do something, well, then it's not going to be trust that comes out of you that you choose. It'll be something different.
Yeah,
And
it's such a great point in terms of, we are choosing, but the environment, and there are things that you can do to the environment to allow people to feel that vulnerability and the willingness to make that choice to trust. So I'm sure we'll get into that at some point, but thinking about, how do you create that right environment to allow people to have that feeling of free will and agency?
And that's something that leaders need to be thinking about constantly, how to do that, how to provide that environment for their employees.
Well, I hope that our listeners will ask questions and continue to tune in. We'll get to some of these aspects that we believe and the research shows in terms of being able to create that right environment, because at bottom line, we know trust is important, and we know trust is a choice.